Hello, hello. Caught me looking over here and I realize I'm live. Today is Wednesday, August 19th. It is a little bit after 12:30 p.m. coming to you on our normal day and time for another episode of Automation Unplugged. This is episode, let's check it out here. This is episode number 133. And have a super exciting guest for you, a gentleman that's coming to us from the commercial universe, the commercial integration space, and healthcare simulation space. And I know you're saying, what in the world is that? Well, we're going to learn all about that as well today. Let me go ahead and check out Facebook. Let me make sure, in fact, we are streaming live. I already see some chats coming in, but let me just check the Facebook machine to see if we are live. And it does look like we are live. Wow, we already got a good audience. What's up, people? Thanks for joining me today. Well, I know you're not here to listen to me or hear from me. You want to hear from our guest. So let me get him introduced. We've got Jeremey. You know what? I'm going to mess up now because I should have asked Jeremey, although I've been talking to Jeremey for many months. I should have asked him for the correct pronunciation of his last name. And now I'm going to get egg on my face because I see him smiling down there. He knows that I should have asked for that before. I'm going to go with Elsesser. Jeremey? Am I getting no? Yeah. Okay. Jeremy's going to correct that in just a minute. He is president of the commercial integration firm by the name of Level3 Audiovisual, coming to us from Arizona. And amongst many cool accolades for Jeremey, he was the 2019 AVIXA and or InfoComm, he'll correct me there, Educator of the Year, which is really an amazing award and recognition for his attention and dedication to the trade organization and to the industry at large to make everyone a little bit better. Lots of fun topics here. We're going to talk about the commercial industry and really what COVID has meant to that industry at large, and some of the real neat transitions and accelerations that are happening in the world of technology and IT. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get Jeremey introduced, and give me a moment here. Let's see if we can bring him in. Jeremey, how are you, sir?
Hey, Ron, I'm good. Thanks. How about you?
Oh, man, another day in paradise. If I was complaining, who would listen? So I'm happy.
Everybody on this podcast, apparently.
Everyone on this podcast. We've already got some people saying, hey. We've got Ted. He says, welcome, Jeremey. We've got Angel. He goes, saludos from Mexico. And we've got Ray. Hey, great to hear about the commercial side of integration. Thanks, Ray. So, Jeremey, where exactly are you coming to us from? Are you doing the office thing or the home office thing?
You know, I'm excited to say that I'm actually in my actual commercial office today at Level3 Audiovisual's headquarters here in hot and steamy Mesa. Well, not so steamy, but very hot Mesa, Arizona.
I was going to say steamy is all relative, coming from the guy here in South Florida, where literally you step out the door and you're sweating because it's 100% humidity. Is there humidity in Mesa, Arizona?
Only after a monsoon, but we've had an incredibly dry summer. So it's just unfortunately been one of the hottest summers that we've ever had, with more record days over 110 than any other summer previous to this. So it's a run from your car to the house to the office situation.
Global warming?
Global warming, asphalt warming, we say here in Phoenix. There's so much blacktop here that there's theories that has actually raised the temperature here.
No, that makes sense. We're going to get into, well, actually, why don't we do this first? Why don't you give a quick summary of what is Level3? Tell us about your business. What type of work do you guys do? Where do you do that work? What do you guys specialize in? And then we'll go back into some of your history.
Sounds good. Yeah. So Level 3 Audiovisual, we're a commercial AV integrator. We started in 1996, going after corporate and higher education, traditional AV, everything from classroom technology to boardrooms to hanging flat panels for restaurants. Since then, we've evolved into a enterprise global services organization. We have a number of professional and managed service offerings. We focus still on corporate, still on higher education, with the addition of healthcare, specifically around the simulation community, which is a fairly small niche community within the healthcare space. And we've certainly played in some other vertical markets along the way that have either gone up or down or consolidated or changed. But where we find ourselves focusing mostly now is on large enterprise clients, specifically folks that have more than one location, more than one site, and in a lot of cases, global presence, and how to facilitate a standardized offering in whatever audiovisual solution that they're looking at. And so lots of conference room technology, meeting room technology, scheduling technology, cloud-based platforms, bringing that into the meeting space. And here in 2020, enabling everybody to connect from home into all of their meeting spaces and into those cloud platforms.
Got it. Now, I do notice you said you are at the office. Was there a time when you were doing the work from home thing, or are you guys all in the office?
So that's a it depends question. So
Okay.
right now I'm still working from home probably about 75% of the time. I chose to come here today in an effort to reduce the background noise of 3 kids doing online schooling and potentially a robotic vacuum going around the house while we're trying to have this podcast.
I haven't had the Roomba interruption before. That would have been fun, perhaps.
It would have been fun. To answer your question, though, like most integrators, we have a number of various disciplines and departments. So if the work that the person is doing can be done from home, for the most part, it is being done from home for the better part of our organization. We have an integration shop that focuses on pre-staging and fabricating our systems before they're deployed, and they've stayed working here at our headquarters, utilizing social distancing and precautions throughout the entire pandemic. And then we also have field teams that are still being deployed wherever they're allowed to go. The nice thing on the commercial side is that we were identified as essential workers early on in the pandemic craze, if you will. And that was amazing, quite honestly, for our industry to be able to continue working where we could work. So those teams have been traveling and have been out in the field as much as they are comfortable and as is possible. And the rest of us are working from home and doing a good job with it.
No, that makes sense. I know our whole team. I'm here in my home office, and our team is all working from home offices, and I would say generally loving it. But we've always worked from home offices, at least for many years. So there's no change for us. You guys have had it much tougher trying to make those transitions happen. We're going to talk about a lot of work from home stuff, home offices, technology, cloud managed solutions. But before we go into that, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a geek at heart, technology geek. I started going to college for IT specifically, so I'm an IT geek to begin with, and certified and degreed. And while I was going to work, or excuse me, while I was going to school for my IT certifications, along the way I met this AV company, the one I'm working for now. Although they were called a different name back then, AVI. And I actually have to take a step back even further than that. While I was going to school for IT, I was a commercial electrician. So I spent a few years figuring out the power side of the equation, because power is required for any technology, as I would come to realize. As I went to school for IT, network administration, specifically network engineering, I met Brad Peterson, the CEO of Level3. Again, the name of the company was AVI at that time. We were building a restaurant from the ground floor up from a power standpoint, and they were doing the AV. I moonlighted a few times and went and helped them pull cable and do some installation work because I thought it was cool. But then I met my next boss slash job while I was going to school, and I went to work for a college, Southwest College of Naturopathic Healing and Medicine, as their network administrator. And I stayed there for about 3 years, focused on production, IT, networking, server administration, all things IT. It was a huge learning opportunity. So I had the power side of the equation. Then I went and got the network side of the equation, or the IT side of the equation. Stayed in contact with Level 3 throughout all of that, did some side work for them, taking care of computers and servers. And eventually Brad came knocking to see if I wanted to transition over into audiovisual. And when I transitioned to Level 3, we were about 5 people, maybe doing just over $1 million in revenue. And since then, we've grown to about 85 people doing about 30 million in revenue. And it was exciting because when I came into AV, the IT AV convergence that everybody was talking about was happening. All of a sudden, all of these AV devices that always had specialized low voltage cabling started to have network ports on them and started to be connected to the networks. And so while all the AV pros were kind of freaking out, trying to figure out all this network stuff, that's the world that I came from. So I really got to spend the first several years just focusing on being an AV person and learning the AV side of the house. And that has really propelled myself personally and Level 3 due to our IT and network background and pedigree. We didn't have to worry about how we were going to perform within enterprise networks. We already had that skill set within house. So then it became riding the wave of convergence that's still happening today. And that was 16 years ago. So I've been here for 16 years. I started as a technician and a programmer. I used to write AMX and Crestron programming, and then found project management and design engineering. And we were a small enough organization that I really got an opportunity to play in every single one of our departments. I got to learn project management and then write process and teach others how to do it, and then hand it off to a much more capable group of individuals. Same thing with engineering. Went and learned all of the certifications that our industry has to offer, learned how to engineer, did production engineering for a number of years, wrote a bunch of processes, developed a CAD library, and passed it off to, again, a much more capable set of individuals. And then apparently I was crazy enough to let Brad convince me to be the president of the organization, which I never thought was in my history, or in my future, I should say. Coming from the technical side of the house, I always thought I would stay on the technical side of the house. But I will say I've definitely found an incredible passion for supporting others. You know, some people look at org charts and where they sit on the org chart. I got really uncomfortable when my box was at the top of the org chart. And I talked to a leadership guy one time, and he shared something with me that changed everything. He said, turn that org chart upside down. I said, interesting. He said, now you're exactly where you should be, which is supporting all of the people and individuals in your organization that are impacting your customers every single day. Every person on the top of that org chart that is actually who is delivering on your mission, delivering the solutions, talking with the customers, interacting with the customers, your job is to support them. And that's when I got very okay with the idea of leading this organization, because I have the privilege of supporting the amazing people that work here.
What is your, to stay at a company for 16 years, and really in your case, it's really inspirational to move up through the ranks and now lead the company. And you mentioned Brad is the owner or the CEO. Is he also actively managing within the company, or are you actively managing the day-to-day? Do you guys split roles or duties?
So he is still actively managing the company. For the most part, I handle most of the day-to-day operational side of the business. He's still very involved on the sales administrations, business development, and quite honestly involved with all aspects of the business. He's a serial entrepreneur who really loves to build cultures. And I want to speak to something because you just mentioned
Yeah,
I've
please.
never worked for another audiovisual company, and I've been here for 16 years. So what keeps me
That's
here?
what I was gonna. I didn't write that in my notes, but just hearing you say that, I was like, I know there's got to be a lot of people listening that are curious. What is your company doing right that had you feeling like you wanted to grow your career at this company?
Well, I'll simply say the culture. At the end of the day, Brad created a culture here that was work hard, play hard, and be resourceful. And when I first came here, as a technical person, didn't so much like salespeople because generally in my previous life, I would know more about the product than the salesperson would. And so I would generally need to get past the salesperson very quickly and talk to an application engineer or some technical person. Brad changed all of that for me when I first came here because he was not only a salesperson, career, lifelong salesperson, but he took the time to actually go look and learn the technology. And so he started to change my mindset on how sales could actually be performed, that it could be more consultative, that it could be more educational, and that you could know what you were talking about as a salesperson and actually deliver on the products that you were out there selling. So that's just one small glimpse. But at the end of the day, what Brad's genius is finding amazing people, surrounding himself with amazing people that are smarter than him, more capable than him, and getting out of their way and empowering them to do their work. And so if it wasn't for Brad, I would not have had the opportunity to come to Level 3 and ultimately grow up to be the president of the organization. And that culture has permeated throughout everyone here at Level 3. And since I've been here for 16 years, I've been able to participate very heavily in developing that culture around quality and around education. Some of my personal passions are around education. Again, I was asked to go figure out and learn how to develop specific departments within the organization. And the only way I knew how to do that was to go learn from the best individuals in our industry, from AVIXA, from AQAV, from folks that had been working towards and figuring out these challenges and issues for many years before I came along, gain knowledge from them, bring that back, teach everybody what I had learned, and essentially build processes around that. And so that fulfilled for me a lifelong learning passion and desire that has really kept me here. That, along with fun. We have a tremendous amount of fun. We hire people for passion. We learned the hard way many years ago that if you don't hire people for passion, it can become a very, very long day and very challenging.
As opposed to hiring them for skill, just to put the other side of that equation is
Yes,
not. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would that be the opposite of hiring for skill?
it would be. Skills are important, but we have found that passion it trumps skill set. You need to be passionate about the industry, passionate about the work that you're potentially going to do, and most importantly, passionate about our organization. Because when you're passionate and you're doing something that you're passionate about, you don't ever work, right? You never work another day in your life. And as any integrator on the web can attest to, it's a lot of long days out there. And if you're traveling, it can be some really long weeks. So if you're not loving what you do, it can just turn into a serious grind that doesn't have that long lasting life or shelf life to it. So really it's all about the culture. We have people come to work for us that might have worked for another organization that maybe didn't have a positive culture, and they tend to have a bit of shell shock, and they carry some of that baggage with them. And it's really interesting to see when we hire somebody new how that starts to expand for them, and they're kind of waiting in some cases for the other foot to fall. Like, these guys can't just be this cool, this nice. Like, at some point the real assholes,
The
frankly,
truth will come out.
they're gonna come out, right? And we've even had new employees reach out to maybe some of our manufacturer partners and say, I don't know what's going on around here. Just everybody's really nice. And the partner on the phone goes, I've been working with these guys for 8 years. They're really just that cool and that nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that
How do
speaks
you
to
think,
culture.
Jeremy, your attention to culture, the company's focus on culture has aided you guys in getting through this, this last really challenging 6 months?
Wow, Ron, that's a really powerful question. And I'll just be super transparent here because that's all I know how to do. Last year and this year, certainly with COVID, things did not go as planned. And COVID threw a huge monkey wrench in that. And with that came anxiety and fear and a lot of negative emotion, a lot of negative challenge. It was easy to get away from the positive side of our culture very quickly, especially with distributing everybody to their houses. Something very cool has happened recently. We were approached by one of our newer employees, and this person wanted to start a culture club within our organization because when she came to our organization, the thing that was most compelling for her was the culture and the passion and how people felt about working here and working towards our collective mission. And she felt that really since the beginning of 2020 and the pandemic, we've taken some hits, we've taken some dents in the armor, and it didn't quite feel the same way. And so never has there ever been more of an important time to focus on our culture. And so we've actually ramped it up. A lot of our culture prior to this just kind of naturally came down from Brad and from myself and from the great people. We felt like we hired great people, and that contributed to the like-mindedness in the culture. Since then, we've gotten real serious about it. We actually have weekly culture club meetings that are open to the entire organization, that are built around vulnerability, sharing. How are you feeling? How can we work together to continue to build on the amazing foundation that we have here at Level 3? And I have been personally very inspired by some of the contribution that we've gotten from folks that have never spoken up at all amongst our culture. So honestly, I got to give a big shout out to Jennifer Wright right now, project manager here at Level 3 Audiovisual, for taking the plunge and approaching the leadership group and asking for the authority and the empowerment and the support to build something around our culture at a time when it was needed the most.
No, I love that. And a person here on Team One Firefly is listening, Ted, and he says it sounds like Jeremy's been listening to Brene Brown. Do you know that name, Brene Brown?
I don't.
Now you're gonna have to Google it after the show.
Yep.
She's we've been doing some of these types of discussions and trainings, and I agree emphatically with everything you're saying about culture. And Brene actually has a bunch of videos on YouTube with a lot of different trainings for company culture and how to deal with all sorts of things regarding, human interaction. And we're big advocates of hers at One Firefly. And so that's what Ted is pointing out. You're getting lots of love here in the stream. So I'm just going to put some of this up on the screen. First of all, Sean says, I love the org chart story, flipping it upside down. So thank you, Sean. Thanks for watching and listening. And Hagai, he's the CEO of a networking company called Access Networks. And Hagai's listening to what you're saying about culture. And I know Hagai's a big fan in the culture over at Access Networks, that I think is pretty amazing. So I know you're definitely resonating with him. And then Carlos, looks like he wrote something long. He says, thank you for sharing your perspective about culture and education when it comes to an organization. Just awesome. And welcome, Jeremy. So I'm going to ask you, Jeremy, what do you think big picture? Your company obviously has had to transition some of your people, sounds like, to home offices. If you are gonna, and this is a big, broad question, so you can take it any direction you'd like. What do you think carries with Level 3 into 2021 in terms of changes that have perhaps permeated your company as a result of, what we've had to go through the last 6 months? What do you think changes for your company in 2021 and beyond?
That's a great question, and I'll first answer it by saying it depends. And what I mean by that is we're still figuring it out. The new norm that everybody's referring to, I think it's continuing to develop. Where we see our organization going is developing even more of a managed services offering and a managed services mindset. This is a big question, so I'm going to wander a bit here with my response in that back to that conversation about AV IT converging. It's been happening for years. I will say that the pandemic.
We haven't touched on that here. We were talking pre-show on that. So why don't you expound on it? What does that mean? AT and IT are converging, and what does it mean, and how long has that been happening?
So it's been happening really for about 20 years. I think it went into full throttle about 10 years ago. But to define what that means, AV as a industry, as a trade, used to be a very separate trade from IT, meaning you would have your IT team, your data pullers, your integrators, your route switch network guys installing cabling and product that helped facilitate the network. And then you had your AV people installing AV cabling and AV devices, and those things never talked. They were separate systems, right? So going way back to video projectors and slide projectors, and at a certain point, we all realized that IT networking technology was taking over the world, and we needed to start building AV products that could leverage the network technology out there. So the convergence is really starting to deliver starting to deliver AV solutions, leveraging and utilizing the network to deliver them, as well as monitor them, manage them, really start to turn them into a endpoint on the network as opposed to a separate, disparate, non-connected system. So that's been going on for 20 years. It's gotten really accelerated over the last 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, and then 2020 came along, and I feel like we've even hit another gear of acceleration as it relates to the IT world converging with the AV world. And we're seeing that in the cloud platforms. We're seeing that in how folks can consume AV today. You don't have to just go out and buy a black box. In fact, your computer is an incredibly capable device that can provide a number of AV services, just like the one that we're doing right now, without ever involving an integrator, without ever involving a separate black box. So it's gotten so ubiquitous in terms of how IT and AV has converged and merged that where we see ourselves going, back to the original question, how are we going to manage this? Well, one answer to that early on was starting to enable folks to work from home. How can we take an incredibly high quality audio and video experience that maybe folks are used to in their meeting rooms at their office and bring that to their home offices? I've made a comment in the past where today our home office is now our meeting room and our children are now our coworkers. So how are we managing that? How are we creating an experience that still allows us to do business, still allows us to sell our solutions and our products, still allows us to communicate effectively with anyone that we need to communicate effectively now at home instead of at our offices? And you actually coined this recently, Ron. I loved it. It's really building personal studios for people that allow them to present themselves as professionally as possible in this new work from home environment. So that's one answer to the question. Another answer to the question is focusing on delivering services as opposed to focusing on delivering equipment. Like most traditional AV integrators, we sell equipment, we install equipment, we design it, we project manage it. That's continuing to change as it has over the years. Things are getting consolidated, things are getting commoditized, products are becoming more integrated all by themselves, meaning that less labor, less programming, less integration services required when you can accomplish it all within one box. As well as the labor side of that is continuing to go down as well, meaning organizations in a lot of cases will install things themselves or have their facilities team or just a construction team member hang a display on a wall or hang a box on the wall. So we're focused on how we can wrap services around developing, deploying, and managing an AV program within an organization. A big buzzword right now is AV as a service. And I like to think of that in a number of different ways. Certainly, you can get a conference room and a box as a service and pay a monthly fee instead of a capital investment. But where we're trying to position ourselves in a couple of different areas is around professional services as a service. Large organizations today have realized that they need to standardize on their meeting room solutions, how they communicate, taking what has happened at the desktop, taking what has happened in matured unified collaboration technologies and bringing that into the meeting space and to the home office now. And not everybody's set up with the appropriate team to accomplish that. So we have all the skill sets in-house to augment existing teams that might be already overburdened IT teams that are still managing all of the IT infrastructure, but are now responsible for the meeting room technology, collaboration technology, streaming and broadcasting, all of these AV technologies. They might not have the resources to be able to manage that from a program standpoint. So we are working hard at being able to develop that program, help build roadmap strategies for the organization, and then deliver and execute on that plan to get them where they want to go from a goal standpoint.
It sounds to me, and I'm fairly green as it relates to IT, so if this is a dumb question, tell me that. It won't hurt my feelings. It sounds like the labor requirements within your business or within a commercial integrator, I would also challenge this, probably relates directly to a residential integrator as well. It really is going towards this labor specialization, this IT managed service, cloud solution level of expertise and consulting requirement, as opposed to, and I'll say as it relates to commercial projects, if projects with capital expenditures and large sums of gear going into them, if maybe that's challenged, and I want you to tell me, is it different now than it was pre-COVID? But if that's changing, does it really mean that firms like yours and your peers need to be really growing this IT muscle within their firm?
So you asked a couple of questions there. I'll answer the last question first with a simple yes. If you're not already growing your IT muscle as an AV integrator, and I think this goes for both the commercial and residential sides of the industry, you're pretty far behind at this point because it's been happening for a long time. The second question, or the first question I should say, was how is it changing pre and post COVID? So I'll just share some of our personal experience. When the pandemic started, a number of our clients paused work or canceled work because of just the unknown factor. And I mentioned this earlier in our conversation, the new norm, or what's continuing to develop as the new norm, which in my personal opinion has not stabilized yet. We still don't have, in my opinion, a good sense of what that ultimate norm is going to look like. And I'll build upon that comment a little bit more here. In some cases, the projects were canceled. In some cases, the projects were paused. In some cases, they continued to move forward because the money was already earmarked and spent. But what came back very, very strongly from all of our clients was a desire to hold back and a desire to wait and see what was going to happen. And so as you unpack that a little bit more, one of our large clients, a global manufacturer of microprocessor technology, they have fabs all over the world, and they have very specialized equipment. They have testers, all kinds of things. What that ultimately means is that there's a portion of their business that will always have to be performed at the office, meaning they can't do their job from home. So
you're not taking the $5 million testing machine home with you.
Yeah, you can't have the wafer machine in your garage. It just doesn't work out, right? So that was at the beginning of this, that was a positive thought process and inspiring that, okay, our entire business isn't going to go to nothing because people are still going to need to meet and still be in the meeting rooms. Well, what was really interesting to me, or compelling, or concerning, I should say, is as I was walking down the hallway of one of these sites, there was a whole row of meeting rooms that were 10-person meeting rooms. And on the door had a sign that said, no more than 3 people allowed in any meeting room. And that triggered something in my head that said, did commercial real estate just get 2 to 3 times more expensive as it relates to meeting room technology? Well, if I'm a business owner and I can accomplish all this communication from home and from your individual desks, why do I need to spend the money on these meeting rooms if I now need the same space that used to accommodate 10 people, accommodating 3 people? And I don't think we're to the point where we can safely answer that question. There's a lot of people putting, and organizations and thought leaders putting ideas out into the world right now as to what it could look like and what the potential could be there. But that has really been the biggest impact of our business as it relates to large capital projects, is a desire by our clients to wait and see how this is all going to turn out. I think one thing that has really happened is that anybody who thought or was concerned about having workers work from home and still being able to do their job and be productive has been flipped upside down. It's not a thing anymore. And
it's been proven you can
it's
work
been
from
proven.
home and be productive.
You can work from home, you can be productive, and guess what? Most of the ones working from home are like, I like this. I want to keep working from home. This provides work-life balance. If I'm in the New York area, I don't have to drive or take a train for an hour and a half in 2 directions to get to the office. I'm more productive and I'm less stressed by the other aspects of what it takes to be in the office. So as we've proven that so many of these jobs can be done from home, I think, again, everybody's just trying to process through, what does this mean for the long term? Where am I going to take my dollars and spend them? There's still going to be technology spend. My question is whether or not it's going to be as much in the meeting room space versus that work from home, or even potentially setting up that personal studio at folks' workstations within an organization if they are still working from the office.
So I want to pull the thread on the concept of the work from home studio or office. But before I go there's a question here, and I'd love for you to address it. Hagai is, first of all, he's saying he loves everything you're saying. And he says it's so true that AV and IT are combining or becoming one. But he has a question. He says, how willing is corporate IT to let you into the operation? And he says, from what he knows, corporate IT is usually very guarded. I'm assuming this is like corporate espionage type stuff. They don't want their secrets to get out, or their communications or IT to be hacked or made vulnerable. How do they let you in?
Hagai, that's a great question, and it's something that we're fortunate at Level3 to have myself leading the charge from an IT perspective. I understand the needs and the concerns of the network side, the security side, the CTO, the CIO, the daily challenges that they have to solve as it relates to protecting IT infrastructure. If you're not educated and skilled on that side of the equation, then you're going to struggle always trying to get corporate IT to let you in. When you present yourself as not only capable, but concerned with and top of mind with how your products, how your solutions are going to interact with the corporate network, you start to build trust and comfortability very, very quickly. So again, it comes back to that comment earlier. If you're not developing the IT muscle, you're behind at this point. You really need to be developing that IT muscle and hiring the skill sets that you might not already have. I'm seeing a lot of AV integrators going after CCNA certifications, Microsoft certifications, because guess what? Our technologies are sitting on servers. I recently deployed a huge Linux distribution globally, and that's being used as the control system processor for thousands of conference rooms. So knowing how to harden that platform, knowing how to communicate with all the right teams is the only way that that corporate IT is going to let you into their organization. AV is looking a lot more like IT these days.
That's fat. I'm looking at the clock and time is flying by, and I think I've gotten through 10% of the topics I wanted to talk to you about. So it sounds like we're going to have you back. But I do want to pull a couple of, he's like, yeah, let's do it. I do want to pull a couple of more threads here. Are commercial integrators going to start moving into the home to provide these home offices or these home studios?
So I absolutely think that is the case, because what you're starting to see is, well, and I shouldn't even say you're starting to see, it's been going on for a long time. There's a number of people that have always worked from home. We have a number of engineers that are spread throughout the country that have been working from home from the last several years, using Zoom, using Teams, using WebEx. I bring these products up because these are commercial products that are paid for by the organizations that are deploying them. So you're using a commercial AV platform at home. So to me, it seems like a very natural step for the commercial integrators to want to provide solutions around those platforms to enhance the experience at home. And we've definitely seen the requests coming where, especially sales folks, C-level executives, they want to bring that experience that they're used to having in their, really expensive $200,000 boardroom into their home office. And it can be done now very, very cost effectively with some very focused products and solutions. And that this actually kind of gets back to that equipment sale conversation, where we do have the ability to sell some equipment into this very particular side of the space. But as you know, a headset can transform the audio experience. We've all been on conference calls with somebody who doesn't have a headset. They're just using the microphone and the camera on their laptop. And when you grade that experience compared to what you're used to, it's just not acceptable anymore, especially when you can't go to work. So, okay, if my job is communicating with people, I need to make sure that I have the devices necessary to make that the best possible experience as I can.
So
and sorry, just one add. As commercial integrators, we have access to a level of product that not only fits into conference rooms, but also fits into home offices as well. Really professional commercial products that are now being deployed and delivered, if not at home, in temporary solutions for schools. We're building lots of carts. And again, it's how do I create that experience that's going to effectively communicate? Because now we're all sitting, I know for me personally, I'm more exhausted at the end of a workday at home than I've ever been before, because when you've had 15 back-to-back Zoom/Teams meetings, if you don't have good lighting, if you don't have good audio, quote of the year, mute your microphone, right? Like that side of
that meme's running around all the social platforms right now, for sure.
I laughed so hard when I saw it, because I've said that at least 500 times this year, at least, right? Because why? Why do we want people to mute their microphones? Because we want to create a really awesome audio experience that everybody can leverage and utilize and not have fatigue, so that we can accomplish the mission of communicating effectively. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for commercial integrators to bring what we do every single day in large meeting spaces to that home office experience.
So I'm gonna try to restate the concept and then have you tell me more about these software solutions, these communication platforms per se. But I'm going to try to interpret this, really not even for the audience, just for me to make sure that I'm getting it right. The idea is that a commercial integrator, particularly a commercial integrator that has the strong IT managed solution side of the business, is delivering comprehensive cloud-based solutions that work in the office, in the boardroom, in the conference room, in the huddle room. And it's now simply saying, and at the home office. And it's all part of one ecosystem. And that really is interesting, because I'll just say from my perspective, and I've worked historically with a lot of residential integration firms, that the residential integrator has, quote, dabbled in commercial, and they'll do the restaurant, or they'll do the dentist's office, or they'll they'll do the boardroom, but rarely, from my perspective, which is limited, do I hear of the commercial integrator wanting anything to do with the home. Usually, historically, they're ready to distance themselves from some of those challenges. And what I think I'm hearing is that has been changing and it's accelerating because of COVID.
Absolutely. What you have said resonates with me significantly. I will tell you that as a commercial integrator, I have zero interest in doing a residential AV project. And for all the residential AV companies out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a different client. It's a different client experience. Generally speaking, it's a different product mix, different outcomes that are being desired. From an AV perspective on the commercial side, when now the outcomes that your clients are looking for in a commercial AV space are being desired at home, is when that line starts to get crossed, and when it becomes a little bit more gray. When all of a sudden you have leaders and workers that are used to working from a commercial environment with commercial technologies are finding themselves at home, they need to augment that experience with commercial technologies to bring that experience up. And so to talk a little bit about the cloud platform side of things, Teams, Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, all of these cloud platforms that we've all been using for years have significantly accelerated since the beginning of COVID. We've got the numbers. The companies are pushing them out publicly to show the amount of usage. And so this isn't Skype. This isn't a home communication tool. It's commercial cloud-based platforms that are used to drive business now being used out of the home exponentially more than they were prior to the pandemic. And so how do we take these platforms? It's a little easier, I think, at home than it is in the meeting rooms. And what I'll say there is, at home, you're still working off a desktop or a laptop computer. And that experience, regardless of what platform you're on, is very standardized across those desktop PCs, those laptops, those iPads, those tablets. When you start taking that experience into a meeting room situation where you now need to support a large group of people connecting to the same platform in that same meeting, that's really what we as commercial integrators, at least in the corporate space, have been really focused on for the last several years, and pushing our product manufacturer partners to develop products that help us bring that native platform experience into those meeting rooms. And with the pandemic, okay, there was a little bit of a pause on the meeting room side. So let's swing that boat, so to speak, and focus on enabling those home workers to have that exact same experience.
So I'm going to ask a bit of a self-serving question here. Right now, my video is the video on my iMac. And I also own a Logitech Brio, which is a 4K camera, although I just continue to have crazy driver issues and it causes my machine to crash. So although I love the image on my Logitech Brio, I just can't seem to get it to work nicely with my machine. It seems that the home office setup, and I'm just going to say with the tools that I know how to work with, video still seems to be a weak spot in terms of how to get nice, robust video from a home office. I'm tossing, what do you do? What are you advising people? What type of caliber? Is there like a whole different tier or caliber of gear that you're designing into projects that are kind of above the $100 and $200 Logitech gear we'd find on, Amazon?
Well, I have to be careful here because there is a number of commercial organizations that are taking that very commoditized consumer level equipment and bringing it into the commercial space.
You don't want to offend anyone. Okay, so that's the rider, that you don't want to offend people that they may be using lower tier gear. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not what I said. That's not what I said at all. I think that it depends on the experience that you're trying to create for yourself. there's a mindset, I think, at this point that good enough is really a spectrum, right? What's good enough for somebody who's not an audiovisual professional versus somebody who is an audiovisual professional is going to be a very wide range. You yourself have been doing a podcast for a long time and have invested a lot of time and energy in trying to increase the product that you're putting forth, right? Lighting, good quality microphone, as we're seeing on the screen here. You're having a higher quality camera image. I will say that on the commercial side, there is a very large range and spectrum of products that can enhance that experience, but you have to figure out what your good enough is, really. And I can't, that's where I don't want to offend anyone, because it's just because you have a nicer camera than somebody else, does that mean that you still can't that you can still communicate? Yes. Like for me, quality isn't always how pretty an image looks, it's does the outcome get accomplished.
Do you find that companies today, I mean, this is a new era with these home offices or home studios, do you find that companies already have a spec, or are you in fact helping them create that spec for what is the company standard?
That's a great question. So just a little plug on who we are. One of our primary services on the professional services side is helping organizations develop enterprise standards. So that means if you have a whole bunch of meeting room spaces that range from a huddle room to a conference room that supports 12 people, to a training room that supports 60 people, to an auditorium that supports 2,500 people, there's a sense now more than ever to create some consistency in standards, standardized equipment, standardized UI, standardized interfaces, standardized user experience, which falls right into that standardized product selection. And then it feeds back into the conversation of how do I manage these products? So when you start to unravel all of the things that go into a standards-based approach for an organization, this year, more than any other year, there is now the work from home kit. You know, it used to be, well, here's my type 1 room and my type 2 room and my type 3 room, all the way up to however many types of rooms you had that you were standardizing on and rapidly deploying to, here's my type 1, type 2, and type 3 work from home kits, my standard data worker, my salesperson kit, and my executive kit all have different ranges of products, and we are absolutely helping our organizations build out those kits, go to the manufacturers and negotiate discounts for buying these kits together. And there's a lot of strategy there, as anybody knows, about standardizing on a particular manufacturer, investing in a partnership with that manufacturer. So that was a long way of answering the question, but yes, absolutely. We are helping our clients develop those standardized kits from home and helping them deploy them rapidly. We've never sold more headsets than we have in 2020 as a commercial integrator.
All right, we're running out of time here. So I'd always love to get a piece of advice or two, although the last hour has been loaded with advice. What words of advice would you give to any integration firms that are out there that feel that their IT muscle is not where it probably needs to be? What should they do? What sort of trainings or certifications or coaching or mentoring is available to them to kind of help nudge them or point them in the right direction?
That's a great question. AVIXA, or InfoComm, but AVIXA is the primary organization name. They have some great classes. They've done a great job of putting those classes online. And for, I want to say, the first several months of the pandemic, they actually allowed anyone who wanted to go take those classes for free. You didn't have to pay a membership. But they've got some really great classes that help get the AV professional deeply introduced to IT and networking, especially around how AV products and solutions need to interact with that network. Taking it deeper than that, which you all should be doing and need to be doing, I really am partial to the network side, because that's where my passion and my start came from, as I loved the pure networking side of it. But if you're not offering a solution today that is a monthly, annually recurring revenue stream, whether it's a monitoring service or reselling, I mean, at this point, a lot of the manufacturers have actually released services that can be resold by AV integrators and start creating that recurring revenue. That starts to change the model, consumption model for the organizations. And that's the hardest thing to take the jump on. When you have that traditional equipment sale, capital project-based business, and you want to move to that recurring revenue type model, take a small step, get with one of your manufacturer partners that's offering a service that's available for resale, and just start selling it. Start getting out there and figuring it out. The first jump is the hardest one, but once it starts happening, it gets easier and easier to change your mindset.
Love it.
That deeper learning, sorry, the one other deeper learning, CCNA. You know, I'm a Cisco guy at heart as far as route switch firewall goes. So that's where I pursued my initial training, and that gets you very, very, very deep into how devices are going to interact on a corporate LAN. And like a guy mentioned, and I'll just bring that back up again, you need to be able to talk the talk that the IT team is concerned about. You need to be concerned about security. You need to be concerned about how your devices are doing on the network. Take the time to develop a network security policy for your AV integration firm and talk about it with your customers. That will immediately start to build trust because, again, you're putting effort and concern towards how your solutions are going to interact with the customer's network, and that's of great concern to them.
No, that makes a tremendous amount of sense. I'm going to close on this topic. You were Educator of the Year last year, awarded at InfoComm. Tell us about that. Tell us how that came to be.
That was probably top 2, possibly top 1 career highlight of my entire career. It was incredibly humbling. So AVIXA teaches a lot of industry education. They hold 3 ANSI certifications, CTS, CTSI, CTSD. I got introduced to this about 4 years ago by a friend by the name of Jim Maltese, who also won Educator of the Year back in 2016. And he dragged me into this world. I shouldn't even say that. I begged him to drag me into this world because I was passionate about teaching and training. And the first year that I taught at InfoComm, and for the most part, it's volunteer training. Industry pros, educators that give of their time freely to go to the show and provide these certification classes. It's an amazing way to give back. And that first year, they do what's called an instructor dinner. And so, like, second day of training, we all go out to dinner, and I'm having one of those moments where I'm looking down the table and I'm seeing mentors that have trained me over 15 years, people that I learned from, and then I'm now sitting shoulder to shoulder as a peer. That was a pretty humbling experience. The Educator of the Year is a voted position, meaning that every year InfoComm has, you know, a slew of 8 or 10 awards, and it goes out to the industry and people put up names and it gets voted on. So it's very much an industry peer voted on situation. And really how it came to be is I've taught at InfoComm for the past 4 years, with the exception of this year because it was canceled. And beyond that, I'm very, very involved with the industry's committees. There's a number of committees. One of them's the Professional Education and Training Committee that works on curriculum development and how we can further define education that's relevant to the industry, as well as my involvement with other organizations like AQAV. We're actually a education partner for AQAV, teaching the classes here at our facility on the West Coast. And those are certification classes around quality management systems. So just a lot of passion and dedication to the education side of the house. I'll finish with saying most of my team showed up without me knowing, with T-shirts with my face printed on them. So when they presented the award at InfoComm, which was a really nice class award, all of a sudden on the right side of the stage, like 30 or 40 of my teammates were there with pictures of me on their shirts, celebrating and cheering me on. And so it was just really one of those moments that I'll
That's
cherish
amazing.
forever.
That's
And
amazing.
it's amazing to be recognized for something that I would do with no recognition at all. I've been fortunate and blessed by getting to learn from some of the best people in this industry. And if I can see far, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. So to be counted amongst them is still today humbling and honestly feels a little bit undeserving on my part, but just makes me want to continue to do more and everything that I can to provide to others what was provided to me.
Is there ever a prank day in the office where everybody just shows up with your face on their shirt? If not, this sounds like a really good idea, team. I think this needs to happen when everyone's allowed back in the office, like just do it for a week straight.
There's been some quality prank days, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that you've seeded an idea that might come back to haunt me now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just speaking of team and pranks, this is not a prank, but Jennifer, you mentioned her earlier, and she did put a nice comment here. She says, Jeremey, bringing you a Brene Brown book, and thank you for leading by example.
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. That's our culture captain right there.
That's your culture captain. Well, Jeremey, it has been a blast having you on the show. How can those listening or watching get in touch with you if they want to learn more or continue the conversation?
Sure. Website, www.level3av.com. Facebook, Jeremey Elsesser. LinkedIn, Jeremey Elsesser. Happy to start any conversations that anybody's looking for.
Awesome. And I'm going to put it across. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Level3av.com. There you have it, folks. Well, Jeremey, it has been a blast having you on the show. I've only gotten to know you this year as we've been working together, and you're always, as you know, we are newer to the commercial integration space. I'd say there's exponentially more that we don't know than we do know. And you've been very kind in your willingness to share and teach both myself and members of our team about your industry and what you do. And so from the entire One Firefly team, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, and looking forward to that invite to come back, because I know we have a lot of material we didn't even touch on.
I was going to say, I don't think we made it through 80% of the topics that we talked about pre-show, but I also feel like this was so much fun, and we covered so much great content.
Thank you again.
Hey, my pleasure. Jeremey, thank you. All right, folks, there you have it. The one, and you know what? And we forgot to ask him how to pronounce his last name. So I was about, you know what? I'm going to bring him back on. I'm going to get that right so that this is on the public record. All right, he's getting a countdown again. Jeremey, help a brother out. How do I say the last name so I don't mess it up?
Elsesser.
Elsesser.
Just got to pronounce it. Just got to pronounce it.
Okay, I see it. It's almost as if there's a hyphen. El-Sesser.
Like an assessor,
Obsessor. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, sir. This time I'm saying goodbye.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys. So there was Jeremey Elsesser. I should have done that pre-show, so shame on me. As much as I try to work on making these shows better and better, I still never fail to make a oops here and there. Today is Wednesday, August 19th. We will be back with another show next week. We're actually going to have our VP of Operations and Finance on, and we're going to be, and his name is Taylor Whipple. And Taylor has been with One Firefly for actually over 7 years. And we were just awarded the new, the Inc. 5000. We were ranked up in the 2000s, almost 3000, but we're kind of in the middle-ish at the Inc. 5000 ratings or rankings. And we're going to be talking to Taylor about that and some of the steps One Firefly has put in place to grow and scale our business over the recent years, the last 2 or 3 years, and some of those, and we've managed to hit some really neat growth goals. And it at least at the moment seems that we'll do the same this year. And so we're going to dig in. If you want to know a lot of the behind the scenes functions and operations and finance and things related to One Firefly, you'll definitely want to tune in next week. And if you have not already done so, I am going to, let's see if I can bring this up. There it is. There's the reminder to follow or subscribe to the Automation Unplugged podcast. And you should be able to find us on all of your normal podcast platforms. Just do a search and you will find us. And on that note, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll see you again very soon. Be well.